Hi everyone and welcome back to another video here on the channel. So today's video is going to be a simple video. It's going to be Sean's tips for visiting Scotland because a lot of you guys have expressed wishes to want to visit. So these are going to be some of my best tips for visiting Scotland, as well as a little list of tips that I found on the internet which was put up by a tourist board, and I'm going to say whether I agree with the things on that or what I would recommend instead. Okay guys, so I'm here in front of the map to do the first little bit. So what we're going to talk about first is a few sort of general tips that I would give. So tip number one is the one place everybody wants to go is Edinburgh. So Edinburgh, super popular destination, and if you want to go there, do absolutely go there. It is amazing. However, I would recommend not spending all your time in Edinburgh. One thing a lot of people do is they do the whole trip in Edinburgh. Now, Edinburgh is very touristy and it is very good, but I don't think it gives you the whole view of Scotland if that's what you're looking for. And like I say, it's very touristy. So if you want to get to know more of the real Scotland, I would say venture out from Edinburgh. Which brings me on to my second point, which is the best way to experience Scotland is via some sort of trip. Whether you want to rent a car or use public transport, I would say touring Scotland, touring a few destinations is the best way to experience Scotland. Now, if you are renting a car, we do drive on the left side of the road. So that's something to keep in mind. And a lot of the roads, especially when we go up to the Highlands, are very small, narrow roads. And the second tip I want to get into here is, other than Edinburgh, the Highlands is probably the best toured part of Scotland. So you've got the North Coast 500, which is one of the most popular touring routes in Scotland, which goes all around the Highlands. And the Highlands is great. You do definitely have to see them. However, there are a few other places that I'd recommend. So apart from Edinburgh, Glasgow is also a pretty good city to visit. The people there are really, really friendly. So Scotland is split into, it's generally thought of as two parts, but there's actually three parts to Scotland. So from about here up, I'd say actually from about there, we have the Highlands. This middle part of Scotland here is the lowlands, and then this bottom part here is what we call the southern uplands. Like I say, the Highlands are brilliant and it's definitely should be on your bucket list if you're coming to Scotland. However, I would also say Glasgow, if you want a city experience, Glasgow is another good city. The southern uplands is where I'm from in Scotland, and it's very beautiful as well. So the southern uplands is part of a mountain range which starts in Ayrshire and it comes right down into England, and it makes up the mountain ranges in the north of England as well. So that is like your Lake District and Yorkshire Dales area. So it stretches up from northern England, comes into Dumfries and Galloway in the borders, and stretches up to about Ayrshire, and that makes up the southern upland mountain range. And the southern uplands mountain range is very different from the Highlands. So the Highlands up here, it is a very dramatic landscape. It is much harsher, much colder. The landscape is more striking, it's jagged, and the landscape in the Highlands is altogether quite ragged. The mountains themselves, there's a lot of big rock structures and things like that. So it's kind of a jarring landscape. Whereas here in the southern uplands, first off, the climate's a little bit different. So it's a lot wetter, but it's also a lot milder. It tends to be a lot greener, and the mountain ranges there are less sort of dramatic, and they're more of rolling sort of mountains. Now, the Highlands does have higher mountains. The southern uplands, the Merrick is probably the biggest, which is about 900 feet above sea level. But yeah, it's still a very spectacular place to visit. So if you've been to the Highlands and you're looking for somewhere else, the Southern Uplands is pretty good. You've also got I think it's called the Southwest 300, which is another touring route in Scotland, which comes, I believe it comes down here and then round the southwest coast, which is very beautiful coastline. Another place which is very good to visit is Argyll. So Argyll, I often describe as a mini Highlands. You have a lot of sort of inner Argyll or mid Argyll is much like the Highlands, but the coastline is a lot more like the southwest coast. So and Argyll is a lot less touristy. The Highlands and Argyll are a little bit more remote, so the road structures aren't as good. Maybe the public transport, if that's how you're going to be touring through public transport, isn't as good, it isn't as reliable. The Southern Uplands has some pretty major road structures, it has some pretty reliable public transport, and if you're flying in from Glasgow or Edinburgh, it is a very short distance away. And then obviously you've got the islands as well. So you've got the Inner Hebrides, the Outer Hebrides, Orkney, Shetland's further up there, but it's here on this map, and then the islands of the Clyde. I would recommend visiting them as well. However, caveat to that being you are relying on ferries when you're visiting the islands. So be aware that bad weather could have your ferry cancelled and you could be stuck there and miss your flight. Another thing that I'd recommend when visiting Scotland is leaving around 10 days for your trip. I would say 10 days for a trip to Scotland is a pretty good time to be able to travel about and see plenty of Scotland. A lot of people come to the UK and they want to visit England, Scotland, Ireland, a bit of Wales, all in one trip. I would recommend going to one country and experiencing it first, because each country has such a difference in its culture and its ways that you probably, if you try and split your trip up and go to all the different countries, you'll probably feel like you're only getting a snippet of each. Something else I'm going to say also, guys, is there are a lot of good beaches in this sort of area of Scotland, so Argyll and the southwest coast. So a lot of people think UK beaches are all rocky and stony. I actually come from right here on this little peninsula. I can think of at least 5 really good sandy beaches within sort of 15 miles of Stranraer. So there's Sandhead, Sandmill, Ardwell, Back Ardwell, Luce Bay. So a lot of good sandy beaches in these coasts. Out here, we actually used to live out here as well. I did some shepherding out in Campbelltown. Machrihanish Beach on the back here, another lovely big beach. And a fun fact about Machrihanish Beach, it's one of the few beaches in Scotland which gets pretty good surf, and people come to surf here in Scotland at Machrihanish Beach. And me and Stacey used to sit there. We used to take the dogs to the beach there and sit on the rocks and watch the surfers. It was absolutely brilliant. Of course, that is cold water surfing, and these guys were wearing big, thick wetsuits to keep themselves warm, because you wouldn't be in that water long, because that's straight off the Atlantic Ocean. So, but yeah, pretty cool. There are a few places in Scotland where there's pretty good surfing, but Machrihanish Beach is probably one of the most iconic. Okay, guys, so this is the list here that I have. It is the Scotland bucket list, and I'm going to go through these quite quickly to see what I agree with. So first we're looking at the must-see section. We have Edinburgh Castle. I agree with this one. Edinburgh Castle is brilliant. There are a lot of good castles in Scotland, however. Loch Ness, absolutely another brilliant one, especially if you want to see Nessie. Slight caveat to that, you probably won't see Nessie. Loch Ness is absolutely massive. It has more water in it than the entirety of the rest of the UK. There are a lot of other good lochs that you could visit though. Loch Lomond, another good one. The Isle of Skye. Yes, the Isle of Skye is absolutely beautiful. There are a lot of good sites there, and there are a lot of things to do there as a tourist. The Royal Mile in Edinburgh. I have been to the Royal Mile, but I was just a kid. But yeah, another one in Edinburgh. The Royal Mile is pretty good. It's a city centre. Stirling Castle. Again, I've never been to Stirling Castle. I I've drove by it plenty, looks pretty good. I'd say it probably would be fairly good. Glen Finnan Viaduct. So this is the famous Harry Potter bridge where the train goes over. If you're a big Harry Potter fan, going there is probably an absolute brilliant experience. However, at the end of the day, it is just a bridge and a viaduct. There are a few hiking trails round about it, but it depends if that's your kind of thing. The Kelpies in Falkirk, so these are the massive Kelpie statues, which were, of course, Kelpies come from Scottish mythology. Again, they're okay, there's not a huge amount to do there. Definitely worth a stop on your way there. It probably won't be your whole day. Cairngorms National Park. Absolutely, I agree with that as well, especially if you are into nature. Cairngorms National Park has a lot of nature, it has a lot of walking trails, has a lot of hiking trails. Pretty good to visit. Just be aware that some hiking trails may need a higher level of fitness than others. Glencoe is actually one of my favourite places. It has such a stunning landscape. Driving through Glencoe is amazing. So if you are doing a road trip, definitely plan by going through Glencoe. It is a sort of narrow road, but it is a lovely drive. Fingal's Cave, never been there, never heard of it. Now we're going to go to Must Eat. So we've got haggis, and again, I would definitely recommend haggis. Cullen Skinkin, never heard of it, don't know. Scotch pie. So Scotch pies, I like Scotch pies. It is basically just a meat pie. They are pretty nice. If you're watching your health, they're not brilliant. Black pudding. Black pudding is probably one of my favourites. I eat quite a lot of black pudding. A lot of people don't like black pudding. That's because they think about what's in it too much. Black pudding is lovely. Shortbread. Also like shortbread. Who doesn't like shortbread? Shortbread's lovely. Lauren sausage. Lauren sausage is also what we call square sausage. So it is basically a skinless sausage in the shape of a square, and it is absolutely lovely, and I would probably have it at top of this list. Other things that you could try, tatty scones, which is a potato, a flat piece of potato in a triangle shape. You fry it up, it's lovely. Battered Mars bar. Scotland gets a lot of slack for this. Battered Mars bars are absolutely lovely. Scotland likes to deep fry a lot of things, and somebody tried deep frying a Mars bar and it worked. What can I tell you? Things to buy. Scottish whiskey. There's also a lot of whiskey experiences here in Scotland that are quite good. I'd recommend them. It kind of depends on yourself. If you're a whiskey drinker, I wouldn't go buying whiskey if you're not going to drink it. Harris Tweed. Some Harris Tweed things are nice, and I'm going to controversially say some are not. Not everything suits being in tweed. I do like the handbags. I do like some of the things that they make. But it's personal preference. At the end of the day, you're the person who's either going to wear it or have it in your house. It's definitely worth visiting Harris Tweed, and looking at some of the stuff that they make is absolutely lovely, and some of it is not to my taste. So bagpipes and mini bagpipes. I wouldn't recommend buying bagpipes or mini bagpipes unless you can play them, because somebody's going to get a hold of them, they're going to start blowing through them, and it's just going to be an absolute assault on your ears. If you know how to play them, definitely buy them. If you don't, I wouldn't. Tartan and kilts, accessories. Absolutely. And another thing I've seen quite a lot is a lot of people saying that wearing a kilt is cultural appropriation. It's not. Us Scottish people do not mind you wearing kilts, wearing tartan. Wear it all you want. If anything, we would encourage it. We love it when people take an interest in our country and our heritage for the most part. Absolutely fine. Get a kilt. Try and get one. If you've got Scottish relatives, try and find one in your family. But yeah, you can absolutely wear any tartan. It doesn't matter. There's only one tartan that you should not wear, and that is called the Black Watch. And the reason for that is the Black Watch is only for members of the Scottish military. Wearing a Black Watch tartan when you haven't served in the military is seen in Scotland as stolen valour. Homemade Celtic jewellery. There is actually a lot of homemade Celtic jewellery out there. Again, I would say it's up to personal taste. I wouldn't go buying it just for the sake of buying it. If that's the type of thing you like, there are a lot of lovely things out there here in Scotland. Heather honey. I love honey. Heather honey is absolutely brilliant. So heather honey is honey from bees which have been collecting nectar from the heather here in Scotland. And it's really nice. Must experiences. So Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Yeah, that's quite a good one. So the Fringe Festival is a festival in Edinburgh. It runs for around 20 days, I believe. A lot of good acts in a lot of pubs. You will pay sometimes nothing, sometimes very little to get in to see these acts. A lot of pubs around Edinburgh will have things on during the Fringe, and some of them are good, some of them are bad. A lot of them are for inspiring artists or artists to get discovered, but it's generally really good. A Scottish castle stay. A stay in a Scottish castle is probably going to cost you a lot of money, and I probably wouldn't recommend staying in a castle. What I would say is visiting castles. There are a lot of good castles to visit, and probably one of the best is Ellandonnan Castle, which is near Cailloch, and it's just an amazing castle. But there are a lot of castles. I've been to a lot of castles. So there's a castle in my hometown, Stranraer, St John's Castle. Me and Stacey have toured Dryborough Abbey over on the borders. When I was a kid, I went to the castle in Bute, and I can't remember the castle's name. There are a lot of castle tours you can take. A lot of them are quite good. Northern Lights in Caithness. Another one that is probably really good. There's almost no way to plan on you having to stay when the Northern Lights are here. They just happen. Caithness, again, it is pretty far up north. It's right up north. So you get a good view of them from there, but actually you will see them from much further south in Scotland when they're here. And it's pretty much just pot luck if you're here when the Northern Lights are here. Tasting whiskey at Isle Distillery. Again, doesn't have to be any specific distillery. There are distilleries all over Scotland that do whiskey tasting, and most of them are pretty good. One thing I would say is do not expect to be served lots and lots of alcohol at these things. They have a duty of care. At most, you'll probably taste 2 or 3 of their specialty whiskies, and they will more be an educational experience rather than trying to get you really, really drunk. Traditional Scottish music at a pub. Yes, I would say this is very good if you get a chance to experience it. It doesn't happen all the time. A lot of pubs will have these on certain nights. So if this is something you want to do, I would research before. You can't just walk into any pub and find Scottish music. And another little thing to that, pubs are very different from bars, but the one big thing you have to know is there are rarely any servers in pubs. What you do is you go up to the bar, you get your own drink, and you bring your own drink back to the table. So if you're sitting at your table, don't sit around and wait and somebody coming to you. In a pub, you go up to the bar and buy your own drinks. A server won't come to your table to take your drinks order. I see a lot of people getting caught out sitting waiting on a server and no server comes, and that's because we don't have servers in pubs. Pubs generally run with just a couple of members of staff, and that's it. Boat trip on Loch Ness. Again, doesn't have to be Loch Ness, but Loch Ness is very nice. There are boat trips all over Scotland. So again, down in the southern uplands, on the Girvan coast, you have boat trips around the Ailsa of Craig, which is a extinct volcano, which is in between the Isle of Arran and the west mainland coast of Scotland. Cailloch, you get boat tours which go out and see dolphins. Plenty of stuff to do. Plenty of boat tours which are fairly recommendable. Doesn't just have to be Loch Ness. So must do. Ride the Jacobite steam train. I've never rode it. I don't know if I would recommend it or not. Watch the Royal Edinburgh Military Tattoo. That's not something you can just turn up and do. It is a very specific part of the year, and the waiting list for that is years long. Watch it on TV maybe, but if you want to get tickets to the Edinburgh Tour, you have to be planning your trip at least 3 years in advance. Explore Scotland's... Explore stone circles on Orkney. Again, doesn't have to be Orkney. There are stone circles all over Scotland, as well as cairns, which are sort of monuments made by Scottish warriors and things. There are a lot of really old stone circles, standing stones, all over Scotland. If you get the chance to go visit them, do it. Kayaking on Loch Lomond. If you have a kayak, that's brilliant. No, I would recommend it if you have the equipment to do it, but as far as I am aware, there probably is a water sports facility there on Loch Lomond, but to actually go and kayak the whole of Loch Lomond would be a very big trip. Hiking the Curragh. So the Curragh Mountains. Absolutely, if hiking is your thing, I would absolutely recommend it. Again, check your fitness levels before you go. Explore. This is another castle. Explore another castle. Like I said, there are lots of castles to explore. It doesn't have to be any specific ones. Me and Stacey, we were driving one day and we found a castle at the side of the road, and it had a path going up to it, and it was just a tower house castle. We walked up the path. You could open the door, go in and explore. It was absolutely free. It was just a small tower house castle. But yeah, you will see castles, ruins, tower house ruins, just driving around. So it doesn't have to be any particular castle. There's castles everywhere, a lot of them which have been restored or have been kept in good condition. There will be a small fee to get in. Some of them even have guided tours. Doesn't have to be any specific castle. A lot of them are quite good. Climb Ben Nevis. Absolutely, if you're fit and healthy, go for it. Ben Nevis is the biggest mountain in Scotland. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. That takes a certain level of fitness, and not even a certain level. You have to be fairly fit. A lot of people get into trouble climbing mountains in Scotland because they aren't A, prepared for the weather, B, prepared for the climb they're about to do. Drive the North Coast 500. Absolutely brilliant road trip. Like I say, there are others, but the North Coast 500 is brilliant. Visit the fairy pools on Skye again. This is actually something that's on my bucket list. I've not actually done this yet. The fairy pools on Skye look absolutely amazing. Okay, so best time to visit. June and August. That's what this is saying. I would agree with that. I would say you could actually visit much earlier. Sometimes we do have very pleasant springs. I would say May through to August, even mid-September can be fairly good trips. Winter, it's still nice in Scotland here in the winter, but it's cold, it's wet. Definitely better in the spring and summer months. Number of days needed, 10 to 15 days. I would agree with that. Don't make your trip to Scotland too short. You'll feel like you didn't see that much. Even if you can't drive or don't want to drive here, pick 2 or 3 locations that you can use some sort of transport, public transport to get there, and tour around a little bit. It doesn't have to be far. If you're flying in Edinburgh, do a few nights in Edinburgh, maybe get the train or a bus up to even Highland Perthshire can be pretty nice, but get a train and a bus somewhere else. Maybe plan your stays in advance, book and tour 3 different places and experience Scotland. So at the bottom we have tips. Rain is very common in Scotland. Bring an umbrella and waterproof hiking boots. Yes and no. Not a lot of people actually use umbrellas in Scotland. It's not something I see a lot. Waterproof hiking boots, definitely. I would say chuck the umbrella and get a really good waterproof coat. It's going to keep you warm as well. A nice waterproof coat will keep you just as dry as an umbrella will. Rent a car for the Highlands. Public transport is limited in rural areas. Absolutely true, but we do drive on the left side of the road, so that's something you have to be comfortable with if you're going to rent a car. But I definitely would recommend it. Or renting a camper van. There is a lot of good park ups in Scotland. Learn a few words. Aye means yes. Nae bother means no problem. And cheers means thanks. Absolutely, but you probably will pick it up quite quickly that these things, or just ask somebody if you're not sure. People in Scotland in general are pretty friendly people, and they will tell you if you ask a question, they'll generally answer you, even though they might have a bit of a joke with you. Sometimes our accent confuses people because the Scottish accent can be quite harsh. People think we're angry or upset. We're not. We just have harsh accents. We're generally quite friendly people. Don't call a kilt a skirt. Do not call a kilt a skirt in Scotland. There's a joke here in Scotland that says the reason they call it the kilt is because the last person who called it a skirt got killed. Scottish summers have long days. They absolutely do. And we also have pretty short days in the winter. So summer, it will be light around 4 o'clock in the morning, and it'll be light right through till about 11 p.m. at night. However, and another little top tip from me here that wasn't mentioned in that, something to be aware of here in Scotland and a lot of the UK and most of Europe, most businesses shut at 5 or 6 p.m. even during the summer. Except for things like pubs and corner shops and big supermarkets, a lot of little businesses will be shut from about 5 p.m. Restaurants will stay open as well. So don't be surprised if a lot of the shops, a lot of the tourist things are shutting down at about 5 or 6 p.m. What I would generally recommend is if you want to go to shops, if you want to go to the touristy things, get them done in the morning or the afternoon, and then have the evening to relax. Go to a pub, go to a restaurant. If you need anything, there generally will be corner shops. If you're up in the Highlands, there will be less so, and even the corner shops in some places, they will still shut at 8 p.m. at the earliest. Some, like your spar shops or some petrol stations, may be open to about 10 p.m. But a lot of businesses shut at 5 or 6 p.m. here in Scotland. Anyway guys, that will do for this video. I hope that gave you some insight and some knowledge about what you can expect from your trip here in Scotland, and I hope that gives off some of my tips as a person who lives in Scotland in some of the best ways to visit Scotland and some of the best things to do while you're here. Anyway guys, that'll do for this video. We'll see you in the next one.